Hi everyone and welcome back to CleverPatch Crafternoons. Happy holidays. I hope you're all out there enjoying your nice little winter break. For today's craft, I thought we would brighten up those winter days and get stuck into a fun craft that involves using modelling clay to create a portrait. Now you might choose to make a self-portrait, or you could do a portrait of a friend or a family member, or you could even create a pet portrait, which can also be lots of fun. Today we're going to be experimenting with things like colour blocking and mixing, as well as getting stuck into some cool techniques involving textures and patterning. Now what we're going to need for this craft is a wooden art panel. Now these have a really nice surface for creating our portraits. It's nice and smooth for applying the modelling clay to. And what they also have is this nice routed hanger at the back. And that means once we're done, we can just pop our portrait straight on the wall. We're also going to be using our CleverPatch modelling clays. Now these are a great range. They have lots of nice bright colours which will really make our portraits pop. You're also going to need a lead pencil, a scratchboard tool or a skewer or toothpick if that's what you have at home, a pair of scissors, and we're going to need a printout of the portrait that you wish to create at the size of your base. So we want this printout to be black and white. We want to see different contrasted levels, so we want blacks, we want the whites, and then we probably want just like one level in between that, so your greys. Have a think about different facial expressions that you want to create. This adds a lot of interest to your portrait and could even lead to, if you wanted to do say 4 different portraits and have them displayed on your wall, kind of like a pop-up feature. Alright, I think we've got everything ready to go. Let's jump into it. So let's start with our printout. As I mentioned, this could be of yourself or a friend, family member, or even your pet. So what we want here is a black and white printout, as mentioned, and we want to have these dark blacks, we want these bright whites, and then we want these little areas of grey in between. Now what that does is when we transfer this to our wooden board, we're going to create these shaped areas for those 3 different colours that we can then use to create our portrait. So in order to transfer our design to our wooden board, all we need to do is flip our printout over, and we're just going to use a lead pencil to colour in the back. So just pop that on an angle and go back and forwards all over the back. You want to cover the whole area where your photo is. And once you're done, it will look like so. And then to transfer it to our board, all we do is make sure the board's the right way up with our routed hanger at the top. Place our printout over the top of the wooden board, and now we're going to trace around our printout. So I like to start by tracing around the main shape, and then what we're going to do is go in and trace around the details. So what I meant with creating this contrasted image is that it gives us these little smaller shapes to trace around. Now we can break this one down, for example, into the white and the grey, and that just gives us a bit more detail. So have a think about the different levels. It doesn't have to be exact, You want to press reasonably hard. So what this is doing is transferring very lightly the graphite from your pencil onto the wooden board below. So continue to do that around your different areas. So on the face, for example, we've got this little shape in here. I'm going to put in as grey, and then this smaller area of that larger shape is going to be the darker blacks. Same over this side. We've got the large grey and then that smaller area of black. And then around those teeth. And just be careful, your paper might rip a bit. So just continue all the way until you've created all those different levels of your design. And what you'll then be left with is this very faint outline of your portrait. So make sure you keep your printout on hand as well, so that you can always refer to it if you get a bit lost with some of those different areas. What you can do if your pencil has gone really light, you can just go back in and trace over it so that you can see those different shaped areas more clearly. So that's what I've done here. I've gone back in with my pencil and just gone over those really light lines, so now we can see what we're working with. It actually looks kind of creepy, doesn't it? So next we're going to choose our colors. For this one, I've decided to go with a dark green for my blacks, a light green for my grays, and then a yellow for my whites and highlights. You could choose to go with contrasting colors as well. It's completely up to you, so you can get some really cool effects depending on what colors you choose. So just make note of what you want to use for your blacks, your grays, and your whites. Now, we're going to start off with our blacks. As I mentioned, it's good to have your printout on hand so that you can see exactly where those blacks are in relation to the photocopy and your portrait. So remembering that my blacks are going to be the dark green, I've just pinched off a small piece of the dark green clay, and what I'm doing is just working that in my hand so that it's going to be easier to work with on the board. So you just want to warm that clay up a little bit. If it's quite cold, it can be quite hard and difficult to work with. So just pinch and pull that clay until it's nice and malleable in your hand. Now we need to apply it to the board. So the best way to do that is simply to take a small amount and match it up with the black area of your printout. So I'm going to start down here on the shoulders, and all we do is get our thumb and we just take a small amount and we press that onto the board. So just press it down and smooth it out onto the board. And as you can see, it kind of creates these brush strokes, almost like we're painting with clay. Now you can make this as thick or thin as you want. I like to go in quite thin to begin with. and then you can build it up if you choose later on. So it can be a bit tricky sometimes, but the great thing about this is it doesn't dry, so you can always lift the clay back up off the board if you need to. And that's how simple it is. So all you need to do is go through and mark out those first layers of your black colour. Like so. So as you can see, we've just filled in the black spaces from our printout using that green clay. Now all we need to do is go in with our grey colour. So for me, that is my light green clay. And then after that, we go in with our whites or our highlights, which I'm going to use with yellow. So we just use that same technique that we've used to place the green clay by grabbing a small amount of the modelling clay, warming it up in our hands, and then pressing and dragging it across the surface of the board. And what you'll end up with is something that looks like this. So you can see now all the different levels have been filled in. A great thing with using these complementary colours is that you can get some of this nice colour blending happening between your different levels. But if you do choose to use your contrasting colours, you can also get this great effect of those hard edges to get a real edgy looking kind of design. Once you've filled in your complete portrait, I like to go in and add some texture. So particularly I like to focus on the hair. So I just take my scratchboard tool, and all you want to do is, again, you can refer to your printout to see the way that the hair is moving, and you just scratch in onto the wooden base that texture of the hair. And this adds a bit more dimension to your design. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, if you don't have a scratchboard tool, you could use a skewer or a toothpick. You could even use the end of your pencil if you wanted. You just need to make sure to clean off any clay at the end. Some nice wavy lines of that hair. You can also see how I've built up certain areas of the face. So I've added some thicker clay to the cheek and the nose and the chin areas. This little craft activity, whilst also producing a great 3D almost look, it's really good to get you to think about portraits and the face and where light hits those areas that are sticking further out and where the shadows fall. And you can take what you've learnt here and apply that to all sorts of portrait making, whether it be painting or drawing or even collage. So now that our portrait itself is done, you get to choose how you'd like to fill in your background. So I'm going to leave this one blank, but You can think about creating patterns in your background. So here I've just done a block color first and then gone through with a contrasting color to create small little polka dot background for a really nice effect. Or you can just stick with a straight colored background. Or you could go crazy and create a rainbow background. Just experiment and see what you can come up with. And that's it. That's how you create your beautiful 3D clay portraits. And that's it for another week of CleverPatch Crafternoons. I hope you've all had a fun time creating your clay portraits. You could really use this technique to create any sort of artwork. So have a think about different things that you could do, and be sure to send us pictures of anything that you come up with and create. We love seeing what you guys are doing out there. Be sure to tune in next week. We have a very special NAIDOC Week edition of CleverPatch Crafternoons, and we're going to have a very special guest join us, so be sure not to miss that one. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week and happy crafting!